Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. We are an inclusive, non-creedal fellowship that works for a just community and fosters a lifelong search for personal spiritual fulfillment. Here at UUCLC, we value making a difference in ourselves, our community, and even in the world. I'm Chris Cleveland, and I'm pleased to be your service leader this morning. Reverend Libby will deliver our sermon, The Joys of Imperfection. So often perfectionism keeps us from finding joy in this amazing and imperfect world. And yet, it's a trait that many of us share. Our sermon today will help us discover what happens when we embrace our imperfect world and our imperfect selves. But first, we have some announcements. Be sure to check out the weekly service bulletin attached to your Sunday service email. There are many UU activities and groups meeting on Zoom this week, and it's a chance for you to get involved and help make a difference in some of our committees and groups. So many groups have continued to be active even during the pandemic. So I bet you can find one that will meet your needs and to help us make a better community as well. I want to correct some information on this week's Sunday bulletin. Our September 19th speaker will actually be Bird Tetzlaff, and our September 26th speaker will be Kathy Schmitz. And it'll be October 3rd when we do not have a service. That should be corrected in next week's bulletin. If you are interested in getting our bulletin or learning more about us, please send us an email to office@lakecountyuu.net or leave your email in the chat box and we can contact you. I'm going to open today with words by Erica Hewitt. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves, including pieces we might be ashamed of. But all of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Some of us already have open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet because our hearts have gotten a little beat up this week, and we might have forgotten how to trust and open up. Your heart is welcome here no matter how bruised, and we welcome you among us. All of us are imperfect, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust that what happens here in worship is powerful and life-giving. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver and more compassionate and wiser than when we woke this morning. You are welcome here. If you are visiting today and are comfortable doing so, please wave your hand, and when you are called on, you can unmute and introduce yourself and tell us what brought you here today. Are there any visitors?
Don't see anyone, Christy.
Okay. I am pleased to announce the return of Reverend Libby Moore. She is a lifelong UU who grew up in White Plains, New York, and is now a member of the First Unitarian Church of Rochester, New York, where she has helped develop and facilitates UU Wellspring. This is a spiritual deepening program developed in Rochester and is now offered to many UU churches across the country and in Canada. Reverend Libby will offer our opening words as our chalice is lit this morning.
Good morning. I join you in welcoming everybody from all over. These words are by Teresa Soto in a meditation manual called Spilling the Light. Some people are used to keeping rules. Don't cross the street when the light is red, only sensible. It turns out that keeping rules isn't the same as keeping covenant, which asks us, instead of keeping a bright line, to keep our promises. And to what have we promised ourselves? To this moment in time and place, to this community, and even tenderly interconnected this planet. We promise ourselves to the idea that we are each and all human beings. We promise that there is something moving between us that we cannot tame and cannot measure. The chalice is a reminder that what flame we keep inside us cannot light the way. The light must spill to shine. The thing you must be is yourself, unadulterated, shedding the willingness to journey alone, as though you were made of something hard and unforgivable. You are human. You belong right here, right now. And together, we will chase away the sickness, the secrets, and leave only the open possibility that the future is a space for growth. Let us worship together this morning.
Each Sunday, we make time for those who wish to offer a joy or concern. This portion of our service will not be recorded. Please take a deep breath and make yourself comfortable as we prepare for a 1-minute reflection. Use this time in whatever way helps you to feel more peaceful. And let's return to our sacred space together. Please remember how we try to be by reciting our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. It is our practice to give generously to our church as we are able, and keeping in mind both its meaning in our lives and its impact on the world. We are thankful for those who provide financial support to UUCLC. And in order to continue our virtual services until our eventual return sometime, we ask for whatever financial support you can provide. There are multiple ways to do this, including clicking on the link in the chat box right now. Thank you for your donation. Come, come, whoever you are, and enjoy one of our favorite hymns, which is from a poem based on a poem by Rumi.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no care of an of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no care of despair. Come yet again, come, wanderer, worshipper, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no care of despair. Ours is no care of despair. Wanderer, worshipper, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no care of despair. 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 Come yet again, come.
I'm just switching to gallery view so I can see you all instead of watching myself. So I have one short reading this morning, which is a poem by Margaret Wheatley called Flawless. For far too many years, I have wanted to be flawless, perfecting my pursuits. I bargained all for love. For all these many years, I've made masks of my own doing, pursuing my perfection. I found I was pursued. And then one day, I fell, sprawled, flattened, lost on the fertile ground of self. Naked in dirt, no mask, no bargains, I raised my soiled face, and there you were. I struggled to stand. Dirt from my body clouded your eyes. Your hand reached for me, blinded. Your hand reached me. There is in all of us a place of pure perfection. We discover its geography together. I'm so glad to be with you all this morning. I'm streaming from Rochester, New York, in Western New York State on Haudenosaunee land that was stolen from Indigenous peoples centuries ago. May we always honor those who came before us. Here in New York State, school traditionally begins the day after Labor Day or the week after Labor Day, although I know it's earlier in the South. But even decades after we picked up our lunchboxes and got on the school bus for the last time, many of us still consider the start of the school year to be the real new year. I was always glad to go back to school. It was the one place where I felt I belonged. I was short, knock-kneed, nearsighted, and I loved to read more than anything, which meant that I didn't really fit in with other kids all that well. But I got good grades, and I loved English and Latin, as my mother had also. But I've realized that these subjects were a breeding ground for the perfectionism that has plagued me much of my life. My mother had two of the same English teachers in high school that I had, Dr. Robacher in junior year and Mrs. Robacher in senior year. They taught us fine points of grammar and usage, and they taught that there was only one right way. To this day, I find myself focusing on imperfections in the way people use language. I hear my mother's voice complaining when someone uses lay when they mean lie, or when they say her and I went to the store. Sadly, my mother has been gone for 35 years now, but her perfectionism still interferes with my ability to appreciate the meaning and intention of what's being said or written. In high school, I was a really good student who loved words, and I got straight A's, except one semester in physics. Out of a graduating class of 770 students, there were 3 who got straight A's, and they were ranked number 1. 7 of us got 1 B in our 4 years, and we were all ranked number 4. Almost 60 years later, I can still tell you the names of the 3 people who were number 1, but I don't remember any of the number 4s. There is such a lot of shame in that 1 B, in that lack of perfection. And I remember vividly that my dad, who bowled with my physics teacher on Fridays, knew before I did that my perfect streak had been broken. Perfectionism is such a high standard that embroils us in shame when we don't meet it. Now, over the past few years, I've started to become aware of how racially biased this tendency to perfection can be. I used to think it was just me, but I've learned that we who identify as white tend to discount others who don't live up to these standards that we've set. In her book, Waking Up White, Debbie Irving writes, I'm struck by how easily I can dismiss a suggestion or opinion of someone who's Black or whose grammar is less than perfect. I'm not an active snob, she says, just a well-programmed passive one. It obstructs my ability to learn and connect. When we demand perfection, we find ourselves isolated in towers of exceptionalism, separated from other flawed humans. But because perfect is really impossible, we also feel shame and guilt at our shortcomings. There is joy in liberating ourselves from the drive to be perfect. When we let go of that mistaken notion that we are lovable only when we are perfect, we realize that we are worthy, even with our flaws. We find joy in humility, compassion, acceptance, and forgiveness. The opposite of perfection isn't imperfection, it's humanity, reality, transformation. We have so much to unlearn. A team at Meadville Lombard Seminary has created a program that you may have heard about called Beloved Conversations. I participated in it this past spring. The first semester of Beloved Conversations is called Unlearning for Liberation, with the idea of shining a loving light on our cultural biases and acknowledging how they affect our work and relationships. Now, the problem with the dominant white culture, of course, is that if we're white, we often don't even think of it as a culture. It's just the way it is. Everybody else has culture, but we're the norm. The author David Foster Wallace told this story in a commencement address. There are these two young fish swimming along, and an older fish swims by in the other direction, and he looks at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then one of them looks at the other and says, "What the hell is water?" We who identify as white do indeed have a culture. We also have the privilege of ignoring it. And when we do, we're oblivious to the ways in which it governs us. That's what Beloved Conversations is all about. One of the many aspects of white culture that we talked about in the first semester is the notion that perfection is possible. I'm clearly not done with that conversation. I always preach what I need to hear. I hate to tell you that. One of our resources was a Dharma talk by Tara Brach, who is a wonderful, wonderful teacher. She's a Buddhist teacher and a therapist, and her talk is called Relating Wisely with Imperfection. She says we're deeply programmed to hang on to our idea of how things should be. Our anxiety about imperfection keeps us tight in our small, ego-centered, separate selves, where we lose sight of our oneness with all being. Our tension about making mistakes creates a sense of not being worthy, not being good enough, but good enough compared to what, she asks. Artists know that we have to take risks and make mistakes. They know that creativity doesn't equate with perfection. In some cultures, weavers make a deliberate mistake in their creations because only God can be perfect, which is a debatable topic for another sermon. Whatever we choose to do, it's not going to be perfect. I'm sorry to tell you that. But take heart, there is a Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi that describes the beauty of imperfection. Here's a description. Wabi-sabi is an elegant philosophy that denotes a more connected way of living, a lifestyle where we are deeply connected to ourselves and to nature. Wabi-sabi is a concept that motions us to constantly search for the beauty in imperfection and accept the more natural cycle of life. It reminds us that all things, including us and life itself, are impermanent, incomplete, and imperfect. If everything in nature is always changing, then nothing can ever be absolutely complete. And since perfection is the state of completeness, then nothing can ever be perfect. Hence, the wabi-sabi philosophy teaches us that all things, including us and life itself, are impermanent, incomplete, and imperfect. I think the most important thing about liberating ourselves from the need to be perfect is that it also liberates us and makes us free to change. If we're holding on for dear life to an image of our perfect selves, then we can't afford to look at what's real, what's true, and we don't really change. I listened to a TED Talk a while ago called How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Talking About Race. It's by a DJ named Jay Smooth, who says, when we think of racism, we tend to see it in binary terms. We're either racist or we're not racist. But the reality, like everything, is more nuanced. We're all imperfect beings and we all make mistakes. It's important to let our defenses down and listen when someone tells us that we've made a mistake, when we've said or done something racist. Think of it as an act of kindness that helps us navigate the world better. He makes this comparison. He says, so you think of yourself as a clean person, but somebody tells you you have a piece of spinach stuck in your teeth. And you don't say, but I'm a clean person, I can't have spinach stuck in my teeth. You say, thank you, and you take the spinach out. So he says, if somebody makes a comment about how you've responded in a way that may be interpreted as racist, it's not something that you need to say, I can't hear that. You say thank you and listen more deeply. He suggests that we practice engaging with our imperfections, and instead of getting defensive, keeping the conversation open so that we can be good to each other and to ourselves. When we listen deeply and openly, when we pay attention to our imperfections, we take the risk that we can and will change. Our liberal religious tradition has done us a disservice by assuming that perfection is possible. In After the Good News, the Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd says, our belief in the inherent goodness of human beings, our confidence in reason and self-culture and personal rectitude has set us up to believe that we can become morally perfect people. She goes on to say, liberal religious people not only tend to believe that we are called to perfection, but we also believe that we are already basically perfect, already basically converted, and already basically blessed. And the result of this belief in our perfection, that we set ourselves apart from others, that we see ourselves as unique and special, and that we believe that we have the answers that will liberate others and make them more like us. This is white-centered thinking at its core, Ladd says. She writes, yes, with Theodore Parker and Dr. King, we believe the arc of the universe, the moral universe, bends toward justice. But what about the ways in which our deep and unexamined privilege affects our view of history? Why are we so quick to focus on the bending toward justice bit rather than honestly addressing the maddeningly long length of the arc, especially for people who live and struggle and lead at the margins of power? Thankfully, our denomination really has begun to address these questions and to engage in the incredibly difficult work of dismantling our white supremacist culture, but we still have a long way to go. We need to understand how our culture and experience affect our thoughts and behavior. And to do that, sometimes we need someone on the outside to ask, how's the water? As a community of faith, we need help seeing how our collective unconscious biases affect people of color who work and worship with us. We UUs think of ourselves as good people with honorable intentions who focus on working toward justice as part of our religious heritage. We support good causes. We vote. We speak out in our communities. We think of ourselves as good people, and we are. And yet, people of color in our communities, in our denominations, see us in a more nuanced way. They sometimes feel like outsiders in a culture that unconsciously assumes whiteness to be the norm. Part of that norm is not talking about unpleasantness. My mother always said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Did yours? I think I had always thought it was just my mother, but I realized it's part of the culture. Don't talk about unpleasantries. It's hard for us to talk about the reality of structural racism in our denomination, even as we're making a serious effort to change it. A couple of years ago, there was a common read, a UUA common read called Centering, Navigating Race, Authenticity, and Power and Ministry. It was written by UU religious professionals of color. One of the contributors, the Reverend Lilia Cuervo, came to the United States from Colombia, and she has an outside perspective both on Unitarian Universalism and on America in general. She sees that there are contradictions in our UU culture and in the larger American culture. And these are some of what she sees. A sense of exceptionalism, the myth that we generally enjoy a superior socioeconomic status, which prevents us from acting justly toward the many among us who don't fit that myth. A culture of dominance and entitlement that leads us UUs to practice social justice by doing for others rather than working with others. An intention to be a liberal religion that welcomes all who are drawn to us, but a preference for those like us. That one really hits home. A claim that we reject dogma, but a capacity to tell people that we don't use the word God in our church. She says this can be particularly hurtful to people who treasure some of the symbols and rituals of their native faith. The writers who contributed to Centering are shining a light on our UU imperfections. Without their perspective, we wouldn't be able to transform into a more loving, more open, more honest people. I hope their words help us take a deeper look at the water we swim in. I hope they help us see that sometimes it's more than just a piece of spinach stuck in our teeth. It's a whole damn salad. We are good people with good intentions, and we make mistakes, and we are flawed, and we are still worthy of love and compassion. We are good people who are letting go of the notion that we might be perfect, and we are relaxing into the joys of being imperfect. The Jewish New Year comes at the end of September, beginning of October, and it's a time to take stock, to assess where we may have caused harm, and to ask forgiveness. It's a practice that we UUs would do well to follow. Sometimes we've harmed ourselves by setting overly high standards. Sometimes we've harmed others by making judgments and excluding them from the circle of wholeness. Whatever harm we have caused, may we recognize it and forgive ourselves and each other. In letting go of perfectionism, may we all find the grace to live with greater compassion. So I love that hymn that we sang earlier, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. As Christy said, the words are from a poem by the 13th century Persian poet Rumi. They acknowledge that we're all welcome here, but there's this subtext that we almost never sing, although I have heard it sung. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again come. We use, like all humans, break our vows. We're imperfect and yet we are welcome here. We are bound together by covenant, by our promise to live up to high ideals. And we are bound together by the inevitability that we will break those promises. Honesty about our imperfection gives us a chance to begin anew as individuals and as congregations. We'll never get it exactly right, but we can get better. May we accept our imperfections and acknowledge that we're flawed and still worthy. May we live with humility and compassion. May our imperfections help us to be more human, more vulnerable, more loving. May we know that we are enough as we are. May it be so, and amen. We're going to hear a piece of music now by an artist called Leah, and she sings, "My hands are good enough." We are good enough just as we are. Feel free to join her as she sings. The words are very simple. And notice at the end that she is also imperfect. Let us sing together, "My hands are good enough."
My hands are strong enough, they're strong enough, and I'm good enough. My hands are strong enough to give love. I know that my arms are long enough, they're long enough, and I'm good enough. My arms are long enough to give love. I know that my heart is wide enough, it's wide enough, I'm good enough. My heart is wide enough to give love. I know that my light is bright enough, it's bright enough, I'm good enough. My light is bright enough to give love. And my heart is wide enough to give love. I know that my arms are long enough to give love. My hands are strong enough to give love. Uh-oh. What problem is it? Not a problem at all. We fix. Boom. 1, 2, 3.
I love that bit at the end because it is so like what I do whenever I'm trying to connect. Our closing words today are by Wayne Arneson. It's from a book called Becoming. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. Christy, would you extinguish the chalice and I'll read the... We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen.
I was nervous, I was scared. He said jump, and I said where? Off this cliff, we're gonna glide. You must be joking, I replied. Not at all. He said to me, I'll be right here. Here's where I will be. We'll take the plunge. It won't be hard. We'll do it once, and that's a start. 'Cause practice makes progress. Give it a try. That thing you think you can't do just stresses you. It's just a journey, you and I. Practice makes progress. Give it a try. Got a friend in a chair. He rolls around here and there. There are things that he can't do. Ride a bike, tie his shoe. But who said legs or eyes or ears makes this world any clearer? He teaches me, I stumble on, and we get up whenever we fall down. 'Cause practice makes progress. Give it a try. That thing you think you can't do just stresses you. It's just a journey, you and I. Practice makes progress. Give it a try. Here it comes again, I'm feeling fearful, afraid of the mistakes that I might make. But fear is just excitement without oxygen. So I will take the deepest breath that I can take. A little nervous, a little shy. New situation, my oh my. But here I go, what's there to lose? I'll still be breathing no matter what I do. 'Cause practice makes progress. Give it a try. That thing you think you can't do just stresses you. It's just a journey, you and I. Practice makes progress. Give it a try. Practice makes progress. Give it a try. That thing you think you can't do.
Instant Angelic Whistling Choir. Please give them a hand, my friends.
You and I. Practice makes progress. Give it a try. It's just a journey. It's always so. Practice makes progress. Here we